Oops, I didn't mean to be on this scene. Goodbye. Well, yeah, I and thank you, Clever, as well, for the nice head, for the nice face hold. Mm. Mm. You. Let me, I'm going to be a slight bit closer. But welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. I hope you're all having a very nice time. We finished the end of the week. We're into the weekend now. The best of times. And there's no worst of times. It's just the best of times. No problem. You wanted to jump on stream to support. You're gonna relax a bit before going to eat. now that you came home. I'm so bad these past few weeks for getting home at the end of the week and lying down and going in about 2 minutes. It has made me like miss a study session here or there. Usually I do it after. Okay, to be fair, I do it after I get home for the week, and then I go to the gym and I come back and I have a shower and stuff, and then I lie down and it's like then I go to sleep. But I try and I always wake up in time for like a stream or something. Usually, you're on homework duty. Oh no, clever. I hope your homework is going well. But here to listen. That's good. That's good. Yeah, we're going to be doing a yeah, I might just turn up the gain a teensy bit. Is that better? Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. This may be a spicy little book. It's before I get into the book, I guess I might just talk a little bit. You have to go mod for Kaz as usual, but you like listening to me talk, so you want to stay here a little while. That's fair, that's fair. I popped into a few Kaz streams here and there when I could. Kaz is very sweet. Kaz is very nice. I spoke to him after stream, and we were talking about our models, and he was showing me his old model, which was gorgeous, by the way. I don't know how long you've been around. I assume you've been around in his chat for quite a while, just a baby, considering you're a mod of his. But I saw that one where he was kind of more medieval, like kind of broadly European, medieval, kind of Germanic. It was really cool, very nice. I loved the layers on the clothing. It was gorgeous. I'm not gonna show it because I don't want to like show another Chuba's thing. That's not fair. But but yeah, I'm gonna try and pop in when I can to him and just say hi. Just like with all of that's the thing about VTubing is over time you have this like net, this web of people that you meet that just ever expands. And sure, some people you kind of like you meet some people, but you don't really chat too much. You know, you're not in their circle, and that's totally fine. But then other times you meet people, and it's like you want to stay in their circle. You want to stay in kind of vague communication with them, I suppose. So you're trying to get into everyone's streams and say hello, and you stick around for like 5 or 10 minutes if you can, and it's such a struggle. And then you're trying to stream yourself. It can be a little bit difficult. You keep trying to make him keep all the different models and switch them out because they're all cool. I do like the one that he currently has, but I must admit the one that he showed me was gorgeous as well. I loved it. I think it really captured the feel of well, at least just kind of a broadly, you know, medieval. You know, I thought it was good. What is that? Rizzer. Void Pop, it's your favorite emo. Oh, just a baby, you're also a fan of Void. I also like Void. Void is very cool. Where's his? Which one of his do I like? Hang on, there's quite a few that I like. My favorite of his currently is probably this one. I like this. I think it's perfect. Why is my stream chat like slightly off to the side? Yeah, I'm going to pull it out a little bit more. There we go. Void, ya boss. I like the manic, the absolute insanity and goblin energy of this. Gremlin is actually what it's called. I like gremlin things. You're an unpaid intern. Yeah, it's kind of like Haru. Every now and again, she makes me give her a pay rise, but like I give her like 5 cents extra. Anyway, we are starting a new book today. The More Unhinged, the More You Love Them. I find either The More Unhinged, and actually, I think what I like about that is how like simple it is. It's not like a high quality one. And often I find like the lower quality, not lower quality, but like I guess like lower detailed ones are actually like really great. Although I do love little Ruru over here. Keep comfy Ruru, just eeping away over there. He's just sleepy. He's just comfy by the fire. New book, yes, Mr. Albionus. We're going to be reading Maid gets raises in forms of bonks. That's a good point. She gets raises in how heavy she can, how many times she can throw a water bottle at my face. But I like ones like for example, this is a You're a little quiet, but maybe that's the point of ASMR. I was noticing that my... Hang on, now let me check my focus right. It might be... Maybe I could up the gain just a little bit more. Because I am talking a little bit softly, and usually I'm talking up here. Like, usually I'm kind of talking here. But now I'm trying to do a little bit of a softer voice. So, let me know if this is a little bit better, perhaps. Because I am talking pretty much directly into the microphone. And I can see now I'm up into kind of the high yellows, but I don't want to be too loud because it might distract, it might hurt people's ears. But I don't think that's gonna happen. I think it should be okay. I did up it a little bit, and now it seems to be consistently yellow, so I think that's good. I think it's good now. But hello, Mr. Albionis. How you doing? How you doing? I saw you got hit by a train on Twitter. In a game, not in real life. For anyone who was like, oh my god, son, are you okay? Son's just missing 2 feet. It made me laugh. Your reaction was great. You didn't even know what to say. You just made noises. It made me laugh. You got hit by the Factorio train a bunch of times. Son, don't you know, like, the safe cross code? Stop. Listen. Smell, I think? No, look. Look is probably... Smell. I smell a Ford. I smell a Ford Focus about 200 meters away. Oh, that's a 16-wheeler. A 16-wheeler coming along. And with Son, he'd probably just smell someone's feet. He'd be too distracted by that. Dogs are dumb. I'm sorry. I was walking my dog yesterday, and I was taking care of him. He is a very good boy usually, and he's actually very good for stopping at the road and like watching, and like only walking when you go. Is that a train I smell? Train smell. But we walked past the dog, and this dog and him do not get along at all. They hate each other. I think that dog that hates him is a pit bull. I will kill that pit bull if I have to protect him. I will say that. Any dog that attacks my dog, I will try my best to not have to. But that's kind of extreme thing to talk about on stream. Let's move past this. I will give you this. If you guys are like, because it is a serious thing to consider. If you ever are trying to stop a dog from attacking someone, because this won't necessarily help you being attacked. You don't want to try and put your hand between them or anything like that. Some people say you pick them up by the hind legs and you lift them up, but some dogs will just latch on. If they have a collar, your best bet is to effectively turn their collar into a what's that medical device? Something you use to choke them. So you can grab either side of the collar and basically just twist it and cut off airflow and blood flow. And then, when it's done, you throw them to the side. If you have a stick, that allows a lot more leverage. You can put it under the collar and use that to like twist it. It's just a good thing to keep in mind if that does happen, because it could very much happen, and it could be something that can be very, very handy to know, because some dogs like pit bulls, you're not gonna get it off by just kicking it. Those things are tough. They are a ball of muscle. Protect the baby. But that dummy, and he's a big dog. He's a big dog. He's not a big dog, but he's a strong dog, They saw each other and they both just tried to like run across the road, and I was holding his collar, or I was holding his leash, and I just pulled him back. I was like, get back here, you dummy. I pulled him along. And the guy across the road laughed, and I don't find it funny. I don't find it funny at all. But, you just have to deal with it, I guess. You saw a chappy looking guy walking down the street with a mean looking dog, and then up the road the opposite way was another. Oh no. Oh no, and as you were walking the walk, you start barking and the owner started tugging on the leashes. Did you see me? Were you over in Ireland recently? Maybe I looked, because no, actually I would have looked quite sophisticated, because I was wearing and I don't think my dog is a mean looking dog, I think he's very cute. I was wearing a neck collar. Not a neck collar. No, I wasn't wearing a collar, guys. I wasn't wearing a collar. No. I was wearing a... What's it called? What a neck... What's the thing with the raised necks? The raised neck. What are those called again? I can't remember. The like the shirts and the comfy... Oh my god, I'm... African neck rings? No, not neck. Turtleneck, that's it, turtleneck. A turtleneck, I was wearing a turtleneck. And those are perfect for like when it's really cold. And it's been getting colder. I'm sure you've been feeling the cold recently, son. I don't know if it's getting colder by you, just a baby. But they're perfect for cold weather because you can pull the neck up over your face and it's like a face mask. So warm. A chilly 9 degrees Celsius in your room. See, that's the thing I like about the PC is that like if it's running kind of hot, it doubles as a heater. A much more expensive heater, I feel like, but still. If you have a dog latching on and it doesn't let go, you actually have to push your arm towards the dog. Yeah, that's another one. If you're able to like get that push and you're able to basically choke them and force them to have to leave go, it's like either it chokes on your arm or it leaves the fuck go. Obviously that's a very hard thing to do in the moment, but you know, it is always good to have kind of just these little thoughts, these little minds like, okay, you know, even if you just have the thought and you think about what could I possibly do, it makes it more likely that you will actually at least attempt to do that thing in a situation rather than if you've never thought about it at all. Because when you have that adrenaline dump of something sudden and surprising happening, and this isn't like a fight, it's like, you know, you're attacked or mugged or a dog is running at you. If you will get that adrenaline dump, and you will either fight, flight, or freeze. And flighting is often a very good thing because it's better to avoid situations than not. But your mind will rapidly search through your memory for a way to act, a way to react to this. And sometimes, and what often happens, is your brain can't find something. And it causes you to freeze. And that's why it's the 3 Fs, fight, flight, or freeze. And there's other things where, like, you know, cost, more serious things like cost benefit, where it might see like the best option is to just freeze, and sometimes that can be the best thing to do for life-wise. But we've talked about kind of depressing things enough. Let's move away from it. It was just on my mind because I was thinking about it when I was walking my dog after that happened. After about 10 minutes though, it kind of left my mind, and I was just going about how much of a good boy he is. It's already snowing everywhere here. We were getting snow actually, but it wasn't sticking. I hate it. It never sticks here. I just want fluffy snow. I just want to feel the crunch of the snow beneath my boot. You don't think your PC is a good heater? You have good cooling? Oh no, son. Oh no. I mean, mine when I'm playing like Baldur's Gate and I'm streaming, it gets up to a nice toasty. It's somewhere in the 90s. I assume it's probably like constantly hovering between mid 80 and 90. There's probably a few cores that are jumping up to 100, trying their best. It doesn't crash, so I assume it's okay. I'm killing my CPU, I know it. Maybe when I kill my CPU, I'll get a new case that allows for better airflow. But anyway, let's your BF was in a K9 unit, so he made sure I got the rundown on everything to do in any situation where a dog is involved. And he adopted his service dog when they retired him. That's so cute. That's so cute. I hope he's a very good boy if he's still around. That's so cute. if he's still around, please give him many cuddles for me. You have a really... Oh, so he is. Okay, I should have read the rest of the message. I didn't know how long ago that may have been. A really good boy that is military trained. He makes sure no dogs or people get too close to us. Oh, I imagine that those type of dogs are like insanely well trained. Mine is not that well trained. He knows sit, he knows lie down, roll over, paw. He loves paw. He'll love his paw. He's actually quite well trained for coming in out of the rain. Because you'll bring him in out of the rain into the house and you'll grab the towel and he'll walk in, put his 2 paws on the mat. He'll allow you to lift up his paws to clean boat, and then he'll walk in. You do still have to kind of put your knees on him a little bit, like kind of just squeeze him between your legs just to keep him in place. But he will kind of just walk in a little bit and stop. And then you'll pick up and dry his other feet. And then off he goes. He has a cute little coat too. I put it on him because it was still snowing a little bit, but it was cute because he was getting like he's a black fur dog, so he was getting like bits of snow on his head. He was shaking it off. It was super cute. He's a real good boy, but he's a Malinois. Malinois, so it's really easy to train that specific breed. A Malinois. Is that how you pronounce it? I'm not too sure. Hang on. Malinois. A Malinois. Oh my god, he looks gorgeous. I love those. Oh, he is a... Okay, I imagine he's such a pretty boy. Cute. Anyway. I think I'm going to get into the book because I think I've yapped enough. So, what book are we reading today? Well, we're starting a new one. Now, this is a book that I have read before, but it's been a while since I've read it, and I've been wanting to read it again. It's called The Theological Origins of Modernity by Michael Allen Gillespie. It is quite a detailed book. It's not super heavy philosophy, or even super heavy theology in the sense that it gets into like the deep weeds about things, but it is somewhat deep. And it definitely covers a large span of history. But what it effectively is Michael sees a break in modernity with the past of the scholastics. He sees specifically the break with the nominalism of sort of like the post-Protestant Reformation theologians and the prior scholastics, Aquinas, St. Augustus and all them, as well as Plato and some others who were part of the general idealist tent. Now, it explains a whole lot of these concepts in very good detail, if I remember correctly. But, you know, there's some things that I don't know fully about. Hopefully they explain it so I don't have to try and bumble my way through. But he details kind of 3 individuals, or 3 movements that really take a look at how a movement from particular philosophical views of God and different theological understandings completely change and lead much of the development for the political and other thoughts of the later centuries. There's even a particular interesting part, a very interesting part for me, as someone who read Thomas Hobbes as one of his first philosophers. So it's the Leviathan, the beginning of the social contract theory, the state of nature, a whole lot of things like that. Really the beginning of liberalism, even though Thomas Hobbes was an authoritarian, in the sense that he believed, was a monarchist, an absolutist. A perfect book to fall asleep to. You got the Book of Concord in the car right now, just homework comes first. But yeah, it is. I think it will be a very good book to read. Authoritarian. I think that's a fair thing to call Thomas Hobbes. He effectively believed in monarchy and gave many arguments for monarchy. Ugh. But he did so from... So it gets into kind of the way that... No, I was joking about the way I said it first. How... Authoritarian. How did I say it? It was like, ooh, speak on... Authoritarian. But I'm going to read the back. Hang on, let me just make sure I'm not just reading like a bunch of reviews. Exposing the religious roots of our ostensibly godless age, Michael Allen Gillespie reveals in this landmark study that modernity is much less secular than conventional wisdom suggests. Taking as his starting point the collapse of the medieval world, Gillespie argues that from the very beginning, moderns sought not to eliminate religion, but to support a new view of religion and its place in human life. He goes on to explore the ideas of such figures as William of Ockham, Petrarch, Erasmus, Luther, Descartes, and Hobbes, showing that modernity is best understood as a series of attempts to formulate a new and coherent metaphysics or theology. And then it has a bunch of reviews from people who I'm sure are very impressive, but I don't know them. Oh, wait, do I? Do I know any of them? I don't recognize any of them. Oh no. But he's a professor. Oh, he was a professor of political science in Trinity College of Arts, and Trinity College is in Dublin. I wonder if he's a Dublin. That's that Trinity College. He's a professor of philosophy at the Duke University, and he's an author of various books. You think you have Leviathan? Leviathan is like one of the... It's probably one of the first books I would recommend someone reading if they wanted to get into political theology, just because I see it as the beginning of kind of the modern day... I can email him? No, he would probably ban me because I'm reading his book on stream. Shh, be quiet. Shh, guys, don't tell anyone. There's a piece here from Milton, Paradise Lost. Is this the region, this the soil, the clime? Said then the lost archangel, this the seat, that we must change for heaven this mournful gloom, for that celestial light. Be it so, since he, who now is sovereign, can depose and bid, who shall by right farthest from him is best. Whom reason hath equalled, force hath made supreme, above his equals. Farewell, happy feels, where joy forever dwells. Hail horrors, hail infernal world, thou profoundest hell. Receive thy new professor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make of a heaven or hell. A heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. What matters where, if I still be the same, and what I should all but less than he, whom thunder hath made greater? Here at least we shall be free, the Almighty hath not built. Here for his envy will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice, to reign is worth ambition through in hell, though in hell, better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. That was Milton, Paradise Lost. So that was a nice little introduction. Let's see if we understand what any of that means. Kind of want to listen to me read Richard III now. Just Richard III? Oh, is it... Maybe did he write poetry? That could be cool. He used to prefer the two treatises by Hobbes, will you believe? The two treatises. Wait, is that Hobbes? Or is that the two treatises on human understanding? Isn't that sorry, I see what you mean. Sorry. I was like, did he write poetry? But you mean the play. Yes. In chapter 11, bankruptcy right now. Yeah, sorry, it was Locke. You have a book by John Milton on your shelf where he complains about the education system. You've only skimmed it. Locke, in contrast to Hobbes. There are differences, but ultimately they're coming from very much similar philosophical beginnings. They both view the individual as supreme, as the first organization. But I actually can't stream for very long because I have to be gone at about probably 10 to 12, which is in about an hour and 50 minutes. So let's get into our book. Now these are quite long. It's not like my earlier book. 10 to 12 on a Friday night. Yes, we're partying. I am a very popular, no, not popular, active and outgoing partygoer, don't you guys know? Preface. Ours is a visual age, and in the last 20 years, two images have shaped our understandings of the time we live in. The first was the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the second the collapse of the World Trade Center towers. These structures were not mere artifacts. They were also symbols deeply embedded in the public psyche. The first was a symbol of totalitarianism and the Cold War confrontation between a free and an enslaved world. The second, the symbol of a liberal world unified by the forces of globalization. The fall of the Berlin Wall gave rise to a belief in a liberal future of peace and prosperity that revived a faith in human progress that the catastrophic events of the first part of the 20th century had almost extinguished. The collapse of the Twin Towers, by contrast, kindled the fear of a rampant new fanaticism that threatened our lives and civilization in an especially insidious way. So I will say, if I remember correctly, there is bits of this about kind of... Some of this is about, once it hits post 9/11, it gets into kind of looking at Islam and kind of comparing the West and the Western developments and Islamic developments. Some of that, I have read some like just short papers that kind of critique and say that there's a little bit more to it that Gillespie is leaving out. But it's been a while since I've read those, and I think for me, I'm more interested in the theological aspects, not necessarily the very much American aspects of the politics. But it doesn't last for too long. It is still very interesting. Just it's not an area that I find the most exhilarating. It's hard to say. When the wall came down, the future seemed to stretch out before us like a broad highway, leading to a modern world united by commerce, the free exchange of ideas and proliferation of liberal government. This was the age of globalization, but a globalization that was conceived as the spread of Western values and institutions to the rest of the world. Science and technology would establish a realm of peace and prosperity. I just realized, hang on, I need my book. I was remembering, I was reading from memory. Also, you know what? Oh wait, wrong button. No pupils. I think people like these eyes. Science and technology would establish a realm of peace and prosperity in which human freedom could finally and fully be realized. With the destruction of the World Trade Center, globalization suddenly appeared in a new light, not as a one-way street to modernity, but as a complex and confusing intersection of paved roads, dark alleys and mountain pathways. As a result, we ceased to look towards a new future, a new golden age, and glanced instead over our shoulders and sideways into the out-of-the-way places we imagined to be filled with dark figures waiting to attack us. The attack on the World Trade Center thus called the modern project into question, and it did so in a new and unsettling way. The perpetrators seemed to be opposed to modernity not because it had failed to live up to its aspirations, or because its obvious benefits had not been equally distributed, but because those aspirations and benefits were themselves defective or even evil. The events of 9/11 thrust these claims in front of us in a particularly trenchant way, and they left many liberal proponents of modernity incredulous. It was easy to understand how someone could be morally outraged by the failure to distribute the benefits of modernity more fairly or widely, or aghast at the environmental impact of modern industrial society, or even distressed by the way in which modernity had ridden roughshod over traditional culture. But how could anyone be opposed to the manifest goods that modernity had to offer? To equality, liberty, prosperity, toleration, pluralism, representative government, and the like. The answer for many was simple and predictable. These new anti-modernists were religious fanatics, seeking martyrdom, true believers, unenlightened zealots. However, while such answers may relieve the immediate anxiety that we feel in face of these events, they cannot be satisfying, for they simply conceal a deeper perplexity. The name or brand of the enemies of modernity, fanatics. They name the enemies of modern fanatics, or brand them. But they leave the source and nature of their fanaticism unexplained. We thus still face an unsettling perplexity. This perplexity, in part, is the consequence of our profound ignorance and consequent misperception of those new opponents of modernity, and we undoubtedly need to understand them more fully. The problem, however, lies deeper than this, not merely in our failure to understand those others, but in our failure to understand ourselves. Now, he has notes. Let me see. They're at the back of the book. These are actually proper notes, too. Okay, so every chapter I'm going to do my best to... I'll do a quick skim of the notes and see if there's anything... Thomas L. Friedman's experience is exemplary. In a chapter entitled While I Was Sleeping, he writes, quote, "Before 9/11, I was focused on tracking globalization, exploring the tension between the Lexus forces of economic integration and the olive tree forces of identity and nationalism. But after 9/11, the olive tree wars became all-consuming for me. During those years, I lost the trail of globalization." What he fails to see is that he was not sleeping, but being driven by, and as a journalist also intensifying, the underlying anxiety that is the necessary complement of the progress that he finds so exhilarating. For a thoughtful... One has to wonder whether in the midst of our prosperity and enlightenment we are not like the earlier lost generation, a people who, quote, "cling to their average day, lest we should be seen where we are, lost in a haunted wood, children afraid of the night, who have never been happy or good." And that's September 1, 1939, by W.H. Auden. Theological origins of modernity sounds so controversial. Ooh la la. Who cares about the theological origins of modernity? You're so right. Fuck this book. I mind throwing it over my shoulder, but you guys couldn't see that. But welcome in, Claire. Welcome in. Welcome in. How you doing? How's your Friday? I hope you're having a nice Friday. The challenge to modernity has been particularly hard for us to understand because it forces us to confront an issue that is buried at the bottom of the modern psyche, since it was at the very heart of the very decision that gave birth to the modern psyche and to the modern world. I am of course referring to the decision about the place of religious belief in the modern world. Modernity came to be as a result of the displacement of religious belief from its position as prominence at the center of public life into a private realm where it could be freely practiced as long as it did not challenge secular authority, science, or reason. The authority of religion to shape private or public life thus was replaced by a notion of private belief and ultimately personal values. The current attack upon modernity that is exemplified by the attack on the World Trade Center is particularly unsettling because it has violently reopened this unsettling question. In order to begin to come to terms with the current challenge to modernity, we thus must return to the question of the origin of the modern project. So you can see where Michael Allen Gillespie was so interested in this topic, because I suppose for him, there's a lot riding on it. A note here: I am aware of the fact that many use the term modernity to refer to a period of time that begins in the latter half of the 19th century. This usage seems to be largely derived from the identification of modernity with modernism. This usage is relatively recent. I use the term in the more traditional sense that sees modernity extending back at least to the 17th century. What then is modernity, and where did it come from? Traditional wisdom on this matter is quite clear. Modernity is a secular realm in which man replaces God as a center of existence and seeks to become the master and possessor of nature by the application of a new science and its attendant technology. On a diet and tired, time to curl up and listen to lovely non-fiction readings. Ah, yeah. When you're on a diet, you often will feel tired. You just aren't getting enough food, so it can be difficult to adjust. I hope your diet goes well, though, Claire. Where were we at? The modern world is conceived as a realm of individualism, of representation and subjectivity, of exploration and discovery, of freedom, rights, equality, toleration, liberalism, and the nation-state. Conventional wisdom also has a fairly clear story of the origin of this modern age. It was a product of 17th century thinkers who rejected scholasticism in favor of science and religious belief and enthusiasm in favor of a secular world. It was rooted in the philosophy of Descartes and Hobbes and the science of Copernicus and Galileo. There's a note here. Others have pointed back to a hidden wellspring of modernity in the thought of Machiavelli, or recently even Leonardo da Vinci. Indeed, a noted scholar seriously maintained modernity began on the night that Machiavelli met Leonardo da Vinci. Hello, Root Felix Bjorn. Irish yandere dominates you. Is that what these eyes give? Are these eyes giving yandere vibes? I don't want to give yandere vibes. Although actually that would kind of be funny. You will listen to my book. Oh, what do you say? What do you say again? What do you call senpai? You will listen to my book, senpai. What? You can't move? Well, I didn't want you running away like last time, so I tied you to a tree. So you're gonna sit here, and you're gonna listen, and you're going to learn. Oh god, should I do something like that? Would be fun. That would be a funny ASMR thing to do. Oh god. That came way too easily, by the way. Oh god. Oh, I actually under. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But thank you so much, Bjorn, for the follow. I would sub if you did it. I should consider it, but I'm not. I need to like write out a thingy. But I am not a. I will say I'm not exactly a not safe for work streamer. I am very much a say so. Say the word. Oh, the M for F, M for F, M for F. This isn't necessarily it is an ASMR stream, but it's a reading ASMR stream, and those triggers are more for. Wait, hang on. I'll do one. I'll do like two more. M for F, M for F, M for F. There you go. Those are more for when I'm doing 3DO stuff. The maid would go feral? Maybe she would. Maybe she would. Who knows? I do apologize to my other viewers. We're going to return to our regularly scheduled programming. Can we still be satisfied with these answers? There are a number of reasons to doubt the adequacy of such accounts. Thank you for the hydrate. Wait, do I have something to hydrate with? Is my tea cold? My tea's cold. Claire, stop this. Claire, you're addressing me. Stop. I'm gonna go grab some water. Hang on. You guys can just, I don't know, look. a minute. Hang on a second. Oh my god, I forgot to unmute. I forgot to mute. Oopsies. I'm undressing. No. You guys were making me. And drowning. Well, I'm not drowning yet, but I will drown now. One more. It's okay, we didn't hear anything. That's good. Because I'd have to kill you if you did. No, I'm not that mean. Or powerful. I just appear in your room, stabs, and leaves. You got auto. You're telling me not to drown? Automod, what do you mean by this? Automod wants me to drown. Don't drown, get automodded? I can't believe this. I permitted the term drown, please. But thank you guys for the hydrate. Thank you, Claire. The account is, after all, the there are a number of reasons to doubt the adequacy of such accounts. Hello, Wolf. Hello. You wanted to say hi while you have a minute of free time. Hi, Wolf. How you doing? I hope your Friday's going well, and I hope you can start your week soon. Oh, thank you, Clever. Clever is always there to help me. I forget to mute my mic when I leave, and I forget to turn off my BRB when I come back. Oh no. I'm a professional streamer, guys, don't worry. Let's go take a look at note 5 here. Friday has been a day, but hopefully it will be better from here on out. Ah, nice one. What? Well, not nice. Not nice that it's been a day, but I think it will be. I think it will be better. I think it definitely will be better. Looking forward to the stream later, too. What does he say? I'll chat later. This account is, after all, the self-congratulatory story that modernity tells itself and its own origins. Thank you, Wesley. Wesley's all day, I think. I look forward to streaming Helldivers. Helldivers will be fun. Me and Wolf are gonna play Helldivers together. I've never played that game, so he's going to bully me and probably like kill me with incidental friendly fire. Danger close, he will shout as he shoots me with a rocket while I'm being swarmed by the bugs. But I think it will be fun. I'll probably have to play that. That is why I'm ending stream earlier, because I'm going to play Helldivers. But I will probably do a lot of readings of this book, because it's a thick book. It's a thick boy. Your best friend loves Helldivers. He's addicted. I'm already addicted to my books, but maybe I'll gain a new addiction. Moreover, recent scholarship shows that the seminal works of Hans Blumenberg and Amos Funkenstein... Okay, that is a name. Amos Funkenstein. That is a name and a half. Oh my god. Amos Moses. Oh god, what are the lyrics of Amos Moses again? Won't you take me to Funky Town? Yeah. Amos Moses lyrics. That was by, Jerry Reed, I'm pretty sure. Now Amos Moses was a Cajun. He lived by himself in the swamp. He hunted alligators for living. He just knock 'em on the head with a stomp. The Louisiana law gonna get you, Amos. Amos. It ain't legal hunting alligators down in the swamp, boy. Maybe I'll do that as a karaoke someday. That would be fun. You won't bully me too much. You'll just bully Fox. She's joining us. Ooh, that'll be fun. You haven't heard that song in years? I go through periods of listening to very specific artists or like genres. I remember I just heard that song randomly. My uncle was listening to it, and by my uncle I mean family member, and I mean another two a day. Someday I'm absolutely gonna dox myself. No, that doesn't matter. And I asked him, and he was like, "Oh, go listen to Jerry Reed." And I was like, "Oh, he's so good. He has so many good songs." But you probably not live close to Louisiana, but maybe you've driven through it. I like to go see like just what a swamp that place is. Have begun to reveal the enormous complexity of the question of the origins of the modern age. Sorry, this reading is already off to a... You doxed yourself early on. You said your name by accident. No one noticed. See, yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get into to I guess compartmentalize the two identities. And I mean, I've seen I saw one of my friends, Kabu. No, it actually happened to two of my friends recently. Kabu apparently joined a meeting call, and he called himself Kabu. He introduced himself as Kabu. And another one of my friends, Magino came back to a meeting that he had left for a little bit online, and he sat down and he was like, hey Chad, I'm back. And I've referred to myself as Ruadh a few times. Hey, I am Ruadh. I mean, what if I wasn't real? Or, well, real is the way you guys see reality. What if I am just a Tuatha Dé from ancient history, just channeling my power to make it seem like I'm just a streamer? Wolfie before you were ever a streamer. It's all natural now. Ooh, that's cute. That's a cute nickname. Okay, let me try and get a dent into this book, though. Where are we? We've only been streaming for a little bit. It's okay. Oh, wait, hang on. That reminds me. I gotta turn off ads so you guys don't get hit with it. Ads hate. I always turn on ads for just a minute or for the first start. You can be Ruadh too, philosophically speaking. I'll take on the form and the substance of Ruadh. As a result, previous attempts to identify modernity as subjectivity, or the conquest of nature, or secularization have begun to look one-sided and inadequate. This book is an examination of the origins of modernity that is informed by this new scholarship, and that seek to demonstrate the importance of understanding the origins of modernity, and coming to terms with the problems we now confront in our globalized world. Your great-great-grandmother was named Wolf. You have wolf blood in you? Oh my god. He's a wolf child. He's gonna get a load of events that gives him buffs from CK2. That was a dumb joke. That's really cool though. That is really, really cool. There's a few names like that in, there's a few names like that. I mean, you have Khan, for example. You have a few names that have like Khan in there. There's wolf children in CK2. There's random events. I think it's a DLC thing. But like Connell, for example, there's a surname that goes O'Connell, and that has a... You wish it was your last name? That would be so cool. You can totally do that, Wolf. You can just decide to be Wolf. Just change your name. This... Oh, hang on, I read this. Okay. Where are we? It is especially concerned to demonstrate the central role that religion and theology played in the formation of the idea of modernity. This view, of course, is not typically a part of the modern story. Indeed, since the time of the Enlightenment, modernity has thought of itself as an effort to suppress religious superstition and authority, encapsulated in Voltaire's famous imperative, "Écrire l'infamie." I have my own note here, hang on. Crush that. N.C. Clark, is that what I'm saying? Crush this. Oh, crush this. What something, maybe? Something like that. I'm guessing he's saying to destroy it. And then attempting to put it out of its misery by declaring God was dead, and culminating in the exceptional decline in religious belief and practice in the latter half of the 20th century. Even in America, where religion continues to play a much more important role than in Europe, the attachment to religion is often perceived, especially by intellectuals and academics, as atavistic and unseemly, especially when it takes on a fundamentalist or evangelical tone. And even in America, the idea that religion should guide public life continues to meet widespread opposition. And of course, that's the kind of I can't remember if there's I think one of the rights in the Constitution has to do with like religious liberty. This opposition to religion in the modern age, however, should not be taken as proof that at its core modernity is is anti-religious. It is certainly true that modernity has consistently struggled against certain forms of religion's doctrine and practice, including the cult of the saints, teleology, the natural law teachings of scholasticism, the geocentric vision of the natural world, and creationism. But I want to suggest that this does not mean that it was therefore a rejection of religion as such. The argument presented in this book suggests that it is a mistake to imagine that modernity is in its origins and at its core atheistic, anti-religious, or even agnostic. Indeed, I will show in what follows that from the very beginning, modernity sought not to eliminate religion, but to support and develop a new view of religion and its place in human life, and that it did so not out of hostility to religion, but in order to sustain certain religious beliefs. As we shall see, modernity is better understood as an attempt to find a new metaphysical or theological answer to the question of the nature and relation of God, man, and the natural world that arose in the late medieval world as a result of a titanic struggle between contradictory elements within Christianity itself. Modernity, as we understand and experience it, came to be as a series of attempts to constitute a new and coherent metaphysics and theology. I will argue further that while this metaphysical and theological core of the modern project was concealed over time by the very sciences it produced, it was never far from the surface, and continues to guide our thinking and action, often in ways we do not perceive or understand. I will argue that the attempt to read the questions of theology or metaphysics out of modernity has in fact blinded us to the continuing importance of theological issues in modern thought in ways that make it very difficult to come to terms with our current situation. Unless and until we understand the metaphysical and theological core of modernity, we will remain unable to understand religiously motivated anti-modernism and our response to it. The current confrontation thus demands of us a greater understanding of our own religious and theological beginnings, not because ours is the only way, but in order to help us understand the concealed wellsprings of our own passions, as well as the possibilities and dangers that confront us. You've thought about it? Think about it more. I have many people to thank. Now it's just going through a various list of people to thank. So now we start the book proper, where we're going to get into history and philosophy and theology. I'm guessing it's going to begin with introduction, the concept of the modernity. On a great day in 1326, 3 men were standing amid a crowd of worshippers in the Cathedral Notre-Dame des Doms in Avignon. The Romanesque structure was clearly in need of repair. You have to go. You'll leave your computer lurking. Oh, thank you, Wolf. See ya later. But it has long been the centre of the spiritual life of what only a decade had been a small provincial town. But now all that had changed. The town had become the new seat of the papacy, and as a result was undergoing a remarkable transformation. A palais was being built, money was flowing in, knights and bureaucrats, courtiers and ambassadors were everywhere. The market was filled with products from all over Europe and the Levant. Scholars, poets and church officials from near and far came and went on a regular basis. The small town was becoming a city of real importance. That these 3 men at the Mass were an indication of the changing times. The first was English, the second Italian, and the third German. All spoke fluent Latin. The first, a Franciscan, was nervous and clearly under some stress. The second, a young man, was foppishly dressed and appeared to be a bon vivant. The third, an older Dominican, seemed lost in contemplation. When the Mass ended, they departed and went their separate ways. Little did they know Did they or their contemporaries know that the different paths they followed from that mass and from Avignon would lead humanity into the modern age? There's a tax abbreviation known as FUTA. That is a very unrelated note, Clever. That is an incredibly unrelated note. Many today, I see you, Gob. Don't you try and poke me. Of course you react to that. Wait, hang on. I'm gonna try and do your it was in your studies, I'm sure. I'm sure that's why it was in your studies. I'm gonna try and do your emote. No, I can't do it. I can't do it smoothly. You wasn't gonna. You were totally gonna. You were totally gonna. I know you. I know you, Gwynny. Many today think that modernity is passé, but in 1326 it was not yet even a gleam in anyone's eye. The inhabitants of that world did not await a bright and shining tomorrow but the end of days. They did not look forward to the future or backwards to the past, but upward to heaven and downward to hell. There is little doubt that they would have regarded our modern world with astonishment. We do not. Familiarity has bred contempt. We take modernity for granted, and we often are bored with it. We also think we know quite clearly what it is. But do we understand modernity? Do we even understand what it means to be modern? The premise of this book is that we do not, and the impact of recent events is driving that fact home to us in a powerful way. You thought that would rub my ear? No, that's that's an ASMR trigger. Silly, Clever. Hang on, I'll rub my ear against the mic. Hang on. You're welcome. That's all you get. What then does it mean to be modern, as a term is used in everyday discourse? Being modern means being fashionable, up-to-date, contemporary. It doesn't have a description. Okay, you know what? I'll redeem those points. Because it only feels fair. It only feels fair. It feels like I robbed you. Review requests. Ear rubbing. Where is it? Ear rubbing. Reject. You should get those points back now. You were not mugged. You were too weak anyways. I could absolutely mug you. Strength doesn't matter much when you have like a knife or a gun. In fact, this common usage actually captures a great deal of truth of the matter, even if the deeper meaning and significance of this definition are seldom understood. In fact, it is one of the salient characteristics of modernity to focus on what is right in front of us, and thus to overlook the deeper significance of our origins. What the common understanding points to, however, is the uncommon fact that, at its core, to think of oneself as modern is to define one's being in terms of time. This is remarkable. In previous ages and other places, people have defined themselves in terms of their land or place, their race or ethnic group, their traditions or their gods, but not explicitly in terms of time. Of course, any self-understanding assumes some notion of time, but in all other cases a temporal moment has remained implicit. Ancient peoples located themselves in terms of a seminal event, the creation of the world, an exodus from bondage or memorable victory or the first Olympiad, to take only a few examples, but locating oneself temporarily in any of these ways is different from defining oneself in terms of time. To be modern means to be new, to be an unprecedented event in the flow of time, a first beginning. Something different than anything that has come before, a novel way of being in the world, ultimately not even a form of being, but rather a form of becoming. To understand oneself as new is also to understand oneself as self-originating, as free and creative in a radical sense, not merely as determined by a tradition or governed by fate or providence. To be modern is to be self-liberating and self-making, and thus not merely to be in history or tradition, but to make history. And the battle between being and becoming is actually a very heavy philosophical topic. Being the way things are, the core concrete things that becoming then is kind of like change. So, you know, a good example was who was it who spoke? I believe it may have been it wasn't Parmenides, because he would have said all is one. I think it was one of the earlier pre-Socratics that talked about the river, a flowing river, that a river is always flowing, is always becoming, but yet seems to still remain the same river of being. I think rather Heraclitus was, yes, it was Heraclitus who talked about the river, and his point wasn't that the river remained the same, rather that the world was always becoming. The universe was in a constant state of flux, of becoming. There was no real being, there was no concrete things, rather things were always changing. I believe that was the general, oh man, it's been a while since I've looked into the early Socratics, but then there were people like Parmenides who believed that all is one, that everything was being, and that becoming was simply a fabrication of our senses. Our senses were faulty and we can't trust them. Good morning, D. How's my favorite angel doing? Mr. Ua. That always makes me smile. How you doing? And really what Plato sought to do was combine the becoming, the concept of change, with the one, combine the two into a comprehensive idea. Accidentally making a link. I know she's trying to make us click on Mr. Ua, and it will infect your computer with the D virus. It just makes D appear on your screen and go hello and leave. And she does that every morning. That would be a good virus. Yeah, it's a very big D. Her devious plans. But welcome in, D. We're doing a little bit of reading on faulty senses, why we have glasses. Definitely. We're doing a bit of reading about the theological origins of modernity. How long left? Good bit more. To be modern, consequently, means not merely to define one's being in terms of time, but also to define time in terms of one's being, to understand time as the product of human freedom and interaction with its natural world. Being modern at its core is thus something titanic, something Promethean. But what can possibly justify such an astonishing, such a hubristic claim? The question is not easily answerable. But an examination of the genealogy of the concept of modernity can help us begin to see how we came to think of ourselves in this remarkable way, and in what sense it can be justified. The term modern and its derivatives comes from the Latin modus, which means measure, and as measures of time, just now with the late Latin derivative modernus, from which all later forms derive. Cassiodorus used the term in the 6th century to distinguish his time from that of the earlier Roman and paristic authors. The term modernitas was used in the 12th century to distinguish contemporary times from those of the past. Shortly thereafter, the term began to appear in the vernacular. Dante used the term moderno around 1300, and in 1361 Nicholas of Oresme used the French moderne. However, the term was not used to distinguish ancient and modern until 1460, and was not used in its contemporary sense to distinguish a particular historical period until the 16th century. The English term modern, referring to modern times, first appeared in 1585, and the term modernity was not used until 1627. The concept of modernity as a historical epoch was originally and often since understood in opposition to antiquity. The term Middle Ages does not appear in English until 1753, although the term Gothic was used in the same sense in the 16th century, and Latin equivalents even earlier. There was a note here that the author made. I'm going to have to remember to mark my notes, or to do a book fold on the notes, I suppose. Let's see if this note was important. This one wasn't. Okay. I hate that. I hate when notes are mixed in with references. So you just flip to the back of the book and it's not actually a note. While the distinction of the old and new were already present in antiquity, it was never used in its modern sense in large measure because the terms were deployed in the context of a cyclical view of time that was present in many ancient mythological accounts of the nature and origin of the cosmos, which were later developed by ancient philosophers and historians as well. New in this context was almost invariably equated with degeneration and decline, as in Aristophanes' Clouds, where the newfangled ways of the Athenians are contrasted with the superior modes of the generation that fought at Marathon. Aristophanes, for example, and this is a note, distinguishes the old style of Aeschylus from the new style of Euripides and the Sophist and his Frogs. This topos was adopted by Callimachus in the 3rd century, and thus many different Roman authors in their discussions of arts and aesthetics. Tacitus and Marcus Aurelius distinguished old and new kinds of historical writing, but they never used their distinctions to name historical periods. Hello, King Bob 12Y. Thank you so much for the follow, and thank you for the first time chat. Know me? I don't know you, but now I do. Welcome in, welcome in. Medieval Christianity worked within this cyclical framework, reshaping it to fit its own theological notions of the world as the unfolding of God's will. I was reminded, I can't remember, I believe this might be Indian, like Hindu philosophy, but you have the whole, like, ages idea, you know. In some places you've probably seen it around Twitter or something, just randomly here and there. You had a King Bob account? You don't know your password? Oh no. Wait. King Bob, it does sound familiar. But they had, like, you know, this idea of various ages. Kind of similar to Plato's, like 3 tiers of his city. But you had, like, the Gold Age, Silver Age, Copper Age, and the Age, I think it was Iron Age, and then Copper Age, or something like that anyway. And then within each of these ages, you had a further division into the same ages. But they all had specific names and stuff, but it's very much the idea of cyclical history. And we're going through constantly degenerating from a higher plane, closer to the divine, into first is stop bronze age. First is stop bronze iron. I don't know. I'm a bit unsure as well. I should talk to Tuppo about that. The specific names for them. Stone, the Stone Age. Medieval Christianity worked within this framework, reshaping it to fit its own theological notion of the world as the unfolding of God's will. The bad age, we're always in it, or so they say. Yeah, we're always in the bad age, the worst of ages. The world has a specific beginning. From this point of view, the world had a specific beginning, course of development, and end that was prefigured and revealed allegorically in Scripture. In framing this account, Christian thinkers drew heavily on the prophecy of Daniel to describe the world as a series of 4 empires, which they identified as the Babylonian, Persian, Macedonian, and Roman empires. In their eschatology, Christ appears at the moment that the last empire came into being, and he will return to establish his golden age when it comes to an end. For Christianity, time thus did not turn in an unending cycle, but began with the loss of paradise and will end with paradise regained. The medieval Christian thus imagined himself not as a competitor for power or fame, in this world, but as a sojourner, a fiator, whose actions on earth would determine his salvation or damnation. Piety was thus more important than courage or wisdom. And there's a series of notes here by giving a little bit more info. Daniel, so the reference to Daniel, this idea goes back to at least to Hesiod, and seems to be associated with the cycle of the seasons and the idea of rebirth of a golden age. This connection, however, should not be overemphasized. From our perspective, it is difficult to see how this notion could have survived the fall of Rome, but from the medieval point of view, the Eastern Empire had never fallen, and the Western Empire had been re-established by Charlemagne. Moreover, while some early Christians, thinkers, drew a clear distinction between their own time and that of pagan Rome, medieval Christianity did not recognize this break. As Reinhard Koselleck has shown, as late as 1529, Christians still treated Alexander the Great's victory at Issus as a current event. While there were some vast differences between the medieval and ancient worlds, medieval Christians didn't recognize them. They lacked concrete knowledge of the ancient world, and Roman Christianity itself had gone to great lengths to conceal the profound transformation it was bringing about. Still, the most important reason the medieval Christianity did not recognize these differences was that in comparison with the purified world to come, both their world and the world of the pagans were all too similar worlds of sin. Back to the proper book. The concept of the modern arose in the context of the 12th century reform of the Church, although it had a different signification than it has today. In the belief that they stood at the beginning of a new age, these reformers, or moderni, saw themselves, in the words of Bernhard of Chartres, as dwarfs standing on the shoulders of giants, lesser men than their predecessors, but able to see farther. I'll take another sip. What they saw from their height, however, was not the way into a shining future of progress and increasing prosperity, but the approaching end of time. This understanding was exemplified in the work of Joachim of Fiore, who preached the imminence of the final age in which the entire world would become a vast monastery. To be modern for them was thus to stand at the end of time, on the threshold of eternity. While this Joachimist vision of the coming spiritual age may seem to anticipate the Renaissance vision of a new golden age or modernity's idea of an age of reason, the medieval notion of the modern was still deeply embedded in the eschatological and allegorical conception of time. There was thus an enormous chasm dividing this view from later conceptions. Note 5 is just a reference. The idea of modernity, as we understand it, is closely tied to the idea of antiquity. The distinction of ancient and modern derives from the 10th century distinction of a via antiquia and via moderna. Originally, this was not a historical, but rather a philosophical distinction between two different positions on universals, connected to two different ways of reading Aristotle. The via antiquia was the older, realist past that saw universals as ultimately real, while the via moderna was the newer, nominalist past that saw individual things as real and universals merely as names. These logical distinctions provided the schema for a new understanding of time and being. While the concept of modernity was formulated in connection with the concept of antiquity, the two terms were initially used in a different sense than their own. Petrarch provided the foundation for the idea of a new time when he described a dark time that separated antiquity from his own age. I'll leave note 6 is a little bit longer. Nope. Where's the next one? Note 8. However, he did not aim at something new or modern, but at a restoration of the ancient Golden Age. This view was widely shared by the humanists. Lorenzo Valla, for example, argued in the mid-15th century that his own age had turned away from the wretched modern age in which human beings had lived until recently. Modern to this way of thinking was not the world that was coming into being, but the medieval world that was passing away. Valla understood his own time not as something new and unprecedented, but as a recovery of what had been lost, a return to the older way of being. Note 8. This was reflected in terminology employed in the discussion of architecture that distinguished Antico and Moderno, but identified Moderno with the Gothic, the pejorative term used by Raphael in the early 16th century to describe a decadent art that had characterized a period between antiquity and his time. The term modern was actually not used in its current sense until the 16th century, and then only to define an artistic style. In fact, it was really only in the 17th century that first George Horne, and then, more importantly, Christophus Salarius, described a three-part schema of world history, with antiquity lasting until the time of Constantine, the Middle Ages until the end of the Eastern Roman Empire, and Historia Nova, a beginning in the 16th century. The idea of a modern age, or as it was later called, modernity, was part of the self-understanding that characterized European thought from the time of Bacon and Descartes. This idea differed decisively from that used earlier because it rested on a revolutionary notion of freedom and progress. Alluding to the discoveries of Columbus and Copernicus, Bacon, for example, argued that modernity was superior to antiquity and laid out a methodology for attaining knowledge of the world that would carry humanity to even greater heights. He knew that this idea was deeply at odds with the prevailing prejudices of his age that looked to the ancients as unsurpassable models of perfection, and he confronted this problem directly, asserting that while the Greeks were ancients, this actually was not a reason to grant them authority. In this view, they were mere boys in comparison to the men of his own time because they lacked the maturity produced by the intervening centuries of human experience. What underlay this changed evaluation of antiquity was not merely a new notion of knowledge, but also a new notion of time, not as circular and finite, but as linear and infinite. Change was pictured as a continuous natural progress, a process that free humans could master and control through the application of the proper scientific method. In this way, they could become masters and possessors of nature, and thereby produce a more hospitable world for themselves. Let's just read the notes for this section. Christophus Salarius. Let's go back to infinite time, we're due an apocalypse. Or finite time, we're due an apocalypse. Wait, no, hang on, you're an angel. That means you'll be able to fly away. I'll be stuck here. Can you pick me up? When the apocalypse starts, D, can you pick me up and fly me away? Christophus Salarius, Historia Universali Breviter Okay, I don't speak Latin. A similar three-part schema was developed by Leonardo Bruni and fleshed out by Flavio Biondo, although they did not think of time period beginning at the end of the Middle Ages as modern. What was that? That was loud. Pick me up? Yeah, she just put her arms under mine and fly me away. She's giving me the what do you call that smile? I can't do that smile. I should get a toggle for that smile. On this point, Hans Baron, the Quirrell, that's a funny way to spell quarrel. None of these points are really that important. The quarrel of the ancients and the moderns. This concept of modernity was controversial from the very beginning. The rise of a new science and the corresponding notion of progress in the context of an intellectual milieu, dominated by an unrestrained admiration for antiquity, led to the famous Querelle des Anciens et des Modernes that captured the attention of French thinkers at the end of the 17th century. The French Cartesians initiated a debate with the suggestion that the reality of scientific progress was an indication of the possibility of a modern art and literature superior to that of the ancients. In response, Nicolas Boileau and others defended the superiority of ancient art and literature. They in turn were attacked by Charles Perrault, Fontenelle, and other French moderns. However, these thinkers were not critical of the actual ancients, but of those of their contemporaries who favored the Renaissance idealization of antiquity that transformed the ancients into classics. There's a long note here. The concept of the Renaissance itself was a creation of 19th century historians and was given its classical portrayal in Jacob Burckett's The Civilization of the Renaissance in Italy, 1860. The term first appears in English in 1845. It is associated with humanism, a term which itself was first used in English only in 1838. Maybe you can do it with magic words, with your strong noodle arms. We'll figure something out. Thus, the quarrel was thus really a debate between the humanists and the Cartesians, and it ended in France with the recognition that while there was progress in the natural sciences, this was not true in the arts. Each age was imagined to have its own standards of artistic perfection. The differences that came to light in this debate, however, were not so easily resolved or set aside. In the years that followed, for example, Voltaire claimed in support of the moderns that the student leaving the Lycée in his day was wiser than any of the philosophers of antiquity. Rousseau, by contrast, argued in the Discourses on the Arts and Sciences that modern arts and sciences had only served to undermine human virtue and happiness, which had flowered so magnificently in Sparta and the Roman Republic. While this quarrel began in France, it was also fought out in England and Germany. In England, where it was called the Battle of the Books, the quarrel extended into the first decade of the 18th century. It covered much of the same ground. Thomas Burnet and Richard Bentley, among others, argued for the superiority of the moderns, and Sir William Temple, Swift, and Dryden defended the ancients. William Wotton sought a middle position, arguing that it was necessary to divide the arts and sciences and judge them by different standards. The debate ended with the triumph of Pope's classicism, but this literary triumph was almost immediately called into question by Newton's remarkable discoveries that seemed to establish the preeminence of the moderns. Note 15. Even Pope tacitly admitted this in his famous couplet inscribed on Newton's tomb: "Nature and nature's law lay hid in night. God said, let Newton be, and all was light." I'll take another sip of water. Reading is always more taxing on the throat than just commentating. In Germany, many of the same issues arose in the latter half of the 18th century. In this case, there was perhaps stronger initial support for the precedents of antiquity as a result of the broad influence of Winckelmann's History of Ancient Art. In opposition to this position, Herder Friedrich Schlegel and Schiller argued that it was necessary to distinguish two different kinds of art, and to recognize that modern art had a different ground from that of the ancients. While Hegel seemed to adopt a middle position that viewed different ages as governed by their own standards, he, too, finally supported the superiority of the moderns, although clearly not without a deep sympathy for the lost glories of antiquity. And there's a note here: such nostalgia for antiquity at times broke out even among those romantics typically more focused on Gothic themes. Edgar Allan Poe's well-known line, quote, "The glory that was Greece and the grandeur that was Rome," is typical. This entire debate points to the great importance modernity places upon distinguishing itself from what came before. Robert Pippin has argued that modernity's need to demonstrate its originality is its reflection of its deep-seated belief in autonomy. One could go even further. Modernity needs to demonstrate not merely its originality, but also its superiority to its predecessors. The idea of progress in this sense is a corollary to or extension of the idea of autonomy at the heart of the modern project. The importance of these two ideas is attested by the fact that they were central to the intellectual crisis that called the modern project into question. While the earlier separation of a scientific and an atheistic moral realm governed by different standards and laws called into question the initial global claims of modernity, It was really Kant's codification of this separation in his antinomy doctrine that cut the ground out from the modern project as a whole. He demonstrated that nature and freedom, as modernity had conceived them, could not coexist, that their relationship was necessarily antimonious. The original modern version of a unified theory that could explain the motions of God, man, and a natural world, thus in his view had to be abandoned. The French Revolution, with its extravagant claims for the rule of reason and its abysmal realization of these claims into terror, only made these limitations of the modern project publicly apparent. If I remember correctly, this introduction goes through a lot. It covers a lot of ground, and then it dives deeper into these aspects, so don't worry. Was there notes that I missed? Yes, there's 18. I actually have 18 kind of highlighted. The repeated emphasis of the superiority of the new contains at its core the demand for constant change and concomitant anxiety that one will fall behind the curve and become outmoded. Fixed and lasting tastes or opinions thus are unacceptable in the face of the onrushing future. Modern man in this sense has to be thoroughly protean in order to retain his status as a member of the avant-garde. So again, becoming, the metaphysic of becoming has definitely had priority in the modern world. Despite the philosophical efforts of many profound thinkers to resolve this antinomy, the 19th and 20th centuries were characterized by an ever-widening gap between these two central components of the modern project. Many romantics and post-Kantian idealists, for example, emphasized the role of human freedom, but rejected the notion that nature could be explained as the mechanical motion of unthinking matter, or the interplay of purely natural forces. However, all of the questions that were raised about modernity were overshadowed by contemporaneous advances in the natural sciences and the rapid development of an industrial civilization that emphasized the benefits of increased human power, but was more or less indifferent to the ways in which this power compromised human autonomy. As a practical matter, while the philosophical and aesthetic qualms of a few had some impact on intellectual life, little could shake the general public's growing faith in a modern scientific enterprise that seemed to hold or promise such widespread benefits to humanity. This faith in progress reached its apogee. Is that how you pronounce that word? Apogee? Apogee? In the latter half of the 19th century, and found its most lasting expression in futurist art and literature, and in great public monuments to technology such as the Eiffel Tower. Even vehement critics of 19th century industrial society such as Marx remained wedded to the underlying aspirations of modernity, arguing only that future steps were necessary to guarantee the fruits of progress were shared by all. And there's a highlighted note here by me. Marx and Engels were devoted to the idea of science. They did not believe that freedom had any historical efficacy, and that it could only be attained when the political constraints on science and technology were removed. The elimination of such fetters would, in their view, unleash the productive powers of technology and usher in an age in which human beings were no longer driven by the natural need to produce their own subsistence, and thus could exist at their leisure. Or leisure, not ledger. The crisis of modernity. Faith in the modern project and the idea of progress was shattered in the first events of the first half of the 20th century. The First World War, in particular, revealed that the progressive development of human power was not simply constructive, but could also be hideously destructive, and that technical progress was not identical with moral progress or with increasing human well-being. The interwar period saw the growth of this pessimism. Excuse me a moment. In philosophical works such as Spengler's The Decline of the West, Husserl's Crisis of European Sciences, and Heidegger's Being and Time, as well as in the literary works of those who came to be called the Lost Generation. However, in light of what at the time was seen as the remarkable social and economic development of the USSR and the recovery of the world economy in the 1920s, the horrible events of the Great War seemed to be merely a momentary aberration in the progressive development of human power and well-being. However, with the onset of the Great Depression, the rise of National Socialism and the outbreak of World War II, new and more profound doubts arose about progress in the modern project. These doubts seemed to be all too fully borne out by the Holocaust, about which it appeared to be impossible for even the most ardent modernists ever again to speak of progress. The advent of the Cold War, with the Soviet occupation of Eastern Europe in 1948 and the emergence of the threat of nuclear annihilation, seemed to put the final nail in the coffin of modernity. Feeling a little relevant today, I must say. The modern project, first conceived in the 17th century, had in fact enormously increased human power in precisely the ways Bacon, Descartes and Hobbes had imagined, but it had not produced the freedom, peace and prosperity they had predicted. In fact, it seemed to a number of post-war thinkers to have brought out the worst in humanity, and in surprising fashion to have demonstrated the truth of Rousseau's claim that progress in the arts and sciences was increasing human power, but also simultaneously undermining virtue and morality. The critique of the modern project in the aftermath of the Second World War took a variety of forms, building in many ways on the earlier critiques of Spengler, Husserl and Heidegger. Some, following Husserl, saw the disasters of the 20th century as a consequence of the defective notion of rationality that had been introduced by Galileo and Descartes. In this vein, Leo Strauss argued that the current crisis was only the final consequence of 3 successive waves of modern thought that had overwhelmed ancient rationalism and natural law, replacing them with a new technology of power and a doctrine of natural rights. The solution to the crisis of modernity, in his view, thus lay not in the intensification of modernity, but in the recovery of ancient rationalism. In a similar vein, Hannah Arendt also saw hope for renewal. You know, you always just kind of say a name in your head and you kind of just assume that's how it's pronounced, or like words. But I just realized, like, A-R-E-N-D-T, Arendt, I guess is how you would pronounce it. Arendt. A renewal in a return to the ancient world, although she drew more on the aesthetic politics and the public life of Athenian democracy than on ancient philosophy. Equally critical of modernity, Eric Vogelin saw a revival of Platonic Christianity as the best hope for renewal. Another strand of critique saw the crisis of modernity not as a result of the defects of modern rationality, but as a consequence of the Western tradition itself that began with Plato and that found its culmination in the thought of Hegel and his progeny. These thinkers did not believe that the solution to the crisis of modernity was a return to an earlier form of reason. Following Heidegger rather than Husserl, they argued an ontological deconstruction of Western rationalism as a whole was a prerequisite for a new beginning. Thus, they saw the solution to the crisis of modernity not in a return to a pre-modern world, but in the exploration of postmodern seas. For thinkers such as Adorno, Derrida, and Deleuze, it was not a Platonist philosophy of identity, but a post-structuralist philosophy of difference that was necessary to free us from the ills of modernity. In contrast to both the pre-moderns and the postmodernists, supporters of the modern project have tried to show that the so-called crisis of modernity is not itself something modern. Rather, in their view, it is due to something atavistic that had been reborn within, but in opposition to modernity. Modernity is not, rather than, in their view, it's due to National Socialism, from this point of view, was not something modern, but a remnant of a Teutonic past, or the product of a romantic reaction against modernity, or the consequence of a Lutheran fanaticism that was fundamentally anti-modern. Similarly, the totalitarian character of socialism in Russia was not the result of the impossible modern hope of making man the master and possessor of nature, but the product of the long spiritual authoritarianism of Russian Orthodoxy that was anti-modern true and true. The solution to the crisis of modernity, as these supporters of modernity see it, thus does not require a turn away from modernity and a subsequent revival of previous forms of life, or a turn to postmodern alternatives, but a purification of modernity itself and a purification of these atavistic or alien and predominantly religious elements within it. They thus see the triumph of fascism, the growth of the triumph over fascism, the growth of secularism, the economic development of Asia and Latin America, and above all the collapse of the Soviet Union, as an evidence of the continuing vitality and power of the modern project. That's very much Fukushima? Wait, no, not Fukushima. Is that his name? Who wrote... Hang on, excuse me a moment. Francis Fukuyama. That's who I was thinking of. Not, Francis Fukuyama. Not... Hello, Lancelot, and thank you so much for the follow. Miguel... Oh, wait. Miguel... Gabriel. I'm going to call you Gabriel. Because I can read that part. Hello, Gabrielle. Welcome in. Thank you so much for the follow. And hello, Lancelot. I hope you're having a nice time. The fall of the Berlin Wall marked the end of the era characterized by the confrontation of an individualistic liberalism and a collectivist totalitarianism. This confrontation not only dominated the politics of the latter half of the 20th century, it also dominated intellectual life. The fall of the wall thus seemed to modernity supporters to be an indication of the innate and irresistible power of the modern project. All that remained for the future was a transformation of the formerly socialist countries into liberal capitalist societies, and the continued modernization of the developing world. Some commenters, perhaps carried away by the excitement of the time, saw this moment as unique and decisive, proclaiming in it the end of history and the realization of humanity's ultimate destiny. I think it's the exact point I was making just earlier with Francis. Ooh, there's a big long note here that I missed. Oswald Spengler, The Decline of the West. Spengler developed the concept of the West to replace what he saw as a defective anti-modern distinction. On this point, see my liberal education and the idea of the West. Oh, okay, I thought there'd be more. Francis Fukuyama, The End of History and the Last Man. For Fukuyama, as for Hegel, history ended in 1806 with the advent of parliamentary democracy. While some see his thesis as merely a continuation of the Whig interpretation of history, it should be noted that Fukuyama sees the triumph of liberalism not as an unadulterated good, but more pessimistically as a triumph of something like Nietzsche's Last Man. It should also be noted that Fukuyama himself later concluded that genetic engineering might well change human nature and establish a new transhuman future. I always think when it comes to like the democratic project, the modern project, yes, has seen the biggest differences across our lives. But it's only been going for like 200, 300 years. Guys, the Roman empires lasted millennia. Literally. Well, no. Millennia sounds like multiple. Well, no, I mean, it got close, actually, the Eastern Roman Empire. But it lasted a long, long time. And already we're seeing the fabric of the modern world kind of tearing at the edges. The genetically engineered Tua rise up and bring back history. Mm-hmm. You mean the genetically engineered Ruadh? Because I'm a beast. I'll take over the world. Excuse me. Where were we? Here we are. In this same vein, but in a more modest manner, others recognize that a great deal remained to be done to establish universal prosperity and perpetual peace, but they believe that this could be achieved by a gradual process of globalization and liberalization that relied on incentives rather than force. Others, and particularly those who were wedded to a postmodern future, saw the end of the Cold War as a triumph of an imperialistic liberalism, but believed that this could be overcome by atheistic politics that sought to establish a multicultural society that was not hegemonic but agnostic, and that moved forward by mutual learning and accommodation rather than war or conquest. Differences would thus not disappear and struggle would continue, but the future would be one of productive encounter. The attack of the World Trade Center called all such optimism into question. In the aftermath of 9/11, the idea of a futurely agnostic multicultural world had receded and been replaced by the fear of an impending clash of civilizations. Insofar as this clash at its core is a confrontation between reason and revelation, it calls into question our easy Enlightenment conviction that reason is clearly and unarguably better or superior to revelation, and that while religion may have its place in modern life, it is clearly an inferior one. It is thus countenanced as a private good and is not seen as a force that ought to shape our public life. What the events of 9/11 most powerfully call into question is the widespread assumption, Western assumption, that civilization is grounded in rational self-interest and not in religious faith. While there is a general consensus that this is true, it is not clear in what sense it is true. The fact that others believe so vehemently that it is not has given us little choice in the short run but to defend our modern world and way of life, but at the same time, we are impelled by this very challenge to reconsider the origins of modernity itself and the decisions, now in many cases forgotten, that shaped and continue to shape our lives. I'm probably going to read for another, say, 15 minutes, and then I'll probably call it there and get ready for playing a little bit of Helldivers 2. The origin of modernity. The conventional story that stretches back at least to Hegel saw the modern age as a product of exceptional human beings, of brilliant scientists, philosophers, writers, and explorers who overcame the religious superstition of their time and established a new world based on reason. Diving to hell, come visit you? I will try, D. I'll come over and say hello. And then I'll leave because I don't want to be in hell. That sounds... I already don't deal with the heat, so I'd rather not. I don't deal with the heat well. I like that it's nice and cold recently. I like seeing my breath in the air. But I will pop down and see you. A new world order based on reason. Modernity in this way is portrayed as a radical break with the past. This vision of the origin of modernity was already called into question in the early 20th century by scholars such as Etienne Gilson, who demonstrated that these supposed founders of the New Age had in fact borrowed many of their essential ideas from their medieval predecessors. Ruadh takes over the world with his powerful DNA. Genghis Khan of me? It reminds me of what Toete said when he first saw me. He was like, your voice and you... I think, yeah, because I didn't have the model at the time. He was just like, your voice makes me think that you ride through towns and leave, leaving many women pregnant. I was like, what are you talking about, Toete? There's a note here. Where is it? Where's the note? It's another just reference. Neither they nor the age they founded was thus as original as they maintained. Building on this beginning, succeeding historians, often focusing on social history and the history of science, have tried to show that the transition from the medieval to the modern world was much more gradual than was hitherto believed. In fact, when examined closely, these historians argue, we see, that there were many more similarities and continuities between the two epochs than the traditional view suggests. Reflecting on these similarities and differences, Karl Lowith argued in The Meaning of History, 1949, that modernity was a result of the secularization of Christian ideals, and that it was thus not ultimately distinct from the Middle Ages. For example, from this perspective of the notion of progress, which is so essential to the modern self-understanding, appears to have been the secularization of Christian millenarianism. Seen in this way, the traditional account of the emergence of modernity as a triumph of reason over superstition seems to be seriously flawed. Millenarianism. Let me look at this. Hang on. We may not get too far at this point. We may start to hit walls where I have to look things up. Is the belief, the doctrine or of belief in the future and typically imminent, 1,000-year age of blessedness, beginning with the culmination of the second coming of Christ, is essential to the teaching of groups such as the Adventists, Latter-day Saints, and Jehovah's Witnesses. Ah, I see. Actually, yeah, that makes sense with the word millennial in there. Where were we? Nice. This secularization thesis, which gained many adherents during the 1950s and 60s, was challenged by Hans Blumenberg, who argued that the modern age is not a secularized medieval world, but something new and unique. On the surface, Blumenberg's position seems to be that a revival of the conventional view that equates modernity with the triumph of reason seems to be a revival of such a view, but in fact he adopts a more Nietzschean view that identifies modernity not with reason, but with self-assertion. The self-assertion that characterizes the modern world in his view, however, is not merely a random will to power, but rather it is directed at solving the problem or questions left by the collapse of the medieval world. Blumenberg thus sees modernity as a second overcoming of the problem that gave birth to Christianity as we know it, the problem of Gnosticism. Such a second overcoming was necessary, Blumenberg argues, because the Christian attempt to overcome it was effective from the very beginning. Gnosticism, in his view, reappeared at the end of the Middle Ages in the form of nominalism, which destroyed scholasticism and gave birth to the view of a voluntaristic as opposed to a rational God. In opposition to this new Gnosticism, modernity attempted to establish a ground for human well-being in the notion of human self-assertion. Modernity in this way was not merely the secularization of Christianity, but something new and legitimate in its own right. Phenomena that look like secularized elements of Christian view of the world are thus, in fact, only reoccupations of now empty Christian positions, that is, attempts to answer outmoded Christian questions in modern ways. The idea of progress from this view is not a secularized form of Christian millenarianism, but rather the reoccupation of the medieval need to show God's hidden hand in all events. According to Blumenberg, the misperceived need to answer such now meaningless questions has blurred our understanding of modernity and led us incorrectly to question the legitimacy of the modern enterprise. Blumenberg's account points us in the right direction, but he does not understand the metaphysical significance of his own argument, and thus does not appreciate the way in which modernity takes form within the metaphysical and theological structures of the tradition. Modernity, as he correctly points out, arose not in opposition to or as a continuation of the medieval world, but out of its rubble. Superior or more powerful modern ideas did not drive out or overcome medieval ideas. Rather, they pushed over the remnants of a medieval world after the internecine struggle between scholasticism and nominalism had reduced it to rubble. Modern reason was able to overcome medieval superstition or dogma only because that dogma was fatally weakened by the great metaphysical and theological crisis that brought the world in which it made sense to an end. Blumenberg is also correct in his assertion that the destruction of the medieval world did not merely open up a new space for ideas and new ways of life, but presented humanity with a new epochal question that has guided human thought in important ways ever since. What is missing in his account is a recognition that the shapes that modern thought subsequently assumed were not arbitrary reoccupations of medieval positions, but a realization of the metaphysical and theological possibilities left by the antecedent tradition. To understand the shape of modernity as it has come down to us, we thus need to carefully examine the origins of modernity, to look behind the veil that modernity itself has drawn up to conceal its own origins. The origins of modernity therefore lie not in human self-assertion or in reason, but in the great metaphysical and theological struggle that marked the end of the medieval world and transformed Europe in the 300 years that separated the medieval and modern worlds. This book is the account of the hidden origins of modernity in those forgotten centuries. In his inaugural lecture at the University of Freiburg in 1929, Martin Heidegger argued that human thought and action are propelled and guided by the experience of fundamental questions. That is, by the experience of profound aporia that calls into question the meaning and nature of everything, including the being of the questioner himself. These questions arise in moments in which the meaningfulness and legitimacy of all ways... My phone is running out of battery, but it's a good thing because I'm going to be ending soon. Can I finish this section? Maybe I'll rush. In which the meaningfulness and legitimacy of all existing ways of thinking and being dissolve when the world seems to be transformed into chaos or nothingness. The experience of this abyss generates a profound anxiety that impels human beings to search for answers, to formulate new ways of thinking and being, and thus to radically reshape the world in ways in which to live. Real historical change, in Heidegger's view, occurs in these moments as a result of a confrontation with such epochal questions. Everything else follows from them. These questions do not merely liberate us from the past, but direct us towards a new future. Heidegger believes the pre-Socratic Greeks had faced such a fundamental question, and that the history of the West since that time has been nothing other than a series of attempts to answer it. Nihilism, in his view, was a recognition that all the answers to this question were inadequate. It was simultaneously the experience of the question itself. Humanity, in his opinion, once again had come face to face with such a question that shattered existing ontology and consequently opened up the possibility of a new beginning, a new world order and a new history. In developing this argument, Heidegger drew heavily on Nietzsche, and also saw the advent of nihilism as a moment of epochal openness. Nietzsche believed that while the death of God and the consequent collapse of European values... Excuse me, I'm actually going to stand up. My back is getting a little tight. I was actually doing... Yeah, let me see if I can move now. I'm going to have to look up at me a little bit. There we go. I'm now looking very much down at you guys. Hang on, let me raise this up just a little bit. A little bit more? There we go. I think I twinged something in my back. My lower back, it's just a little bit sore. I'll probably be sore in the morning, I bet. Nietzsche believed that while the death of God and the consequent collapse of European values would throw humanity into an abyss of war and destruction, this event would also open up the world in a way unknown since the tragic age of the Greeks. While he recognized that God's death would produce a monstrous logic of terror, he also believed that quote, at long last, the horizon appears free to us again. If God is dead and nothing is true, then, he concluded, everything is permitted. The abyss of nihilism is thus intimately connected with a radical epochal openness. While Nietzsche and Heidegger were correct in seeing the decisive nature of such questions, they exaggerated the openness that they produced. In fact, the experience of these questions may propel humanity in new directions and towards new answers. But human beings always formulate these answers within prevailing conceptual structures that thus continue in many ways to shape our ways of thinking about things. We see this clearly in the development of modern thought. Modernity comes into being as a result of the confrontation with an epochal question. The real-world midnight that has shaped our thinking, however, lies not at the end of modernity but at its beginning. In fact, the nihilistic end of modernity is only the pale image of this beginning, and if we want to understand ourselves and where we have come from, what has impelled us and what continues to impel us, we need to come to terms with this beginning. This book is about that beginning, about the nihilistic crisis in late medieval thought that gave birth to the epochal question that stands behind and guides modernity. It will argue in what follows that modernity, as we understand it, came into being through a series of answers to this question and constructed new ways of thinking, being and acting for a world that seemed to be slipping into an abyss. I will also try to show that while these answers all share certain ontological assumptions, they lay out radically different and at times mutually antagonistic visions of the nature and relationship of man, God, nature, and reason. An understanding of the question of modernity, in this sense, opens up a view into the conflictual essence of modernity. Oh God, that is kind of sore. I'm not going to lie, just a little bit. The epochal question that gave birth to the modern age arose out of metaphysical and theological crisis within modernity about the nature of God and thus the nature of being. This crisis was most evident in the nominalist revolution against scholasticism. This revolution in thought, however, was itself a reflection of a deeper transformation in the experience of existence as such. Scholastics in the High Middle Ages were ontologically realist. That is to say, they believed in the real existence of universals, or to put the matter another way, they experienced the world as the instantiation of the categories of divine reason. They experienced, believed in, and asserted the ultimate reality, not of particular things, but of universals, and they articulated this experience in a syllogistic logic that was perceived to correspond to, or reflect, divine logic and divine reason. Creation itself was the embodiment of this reason, and man as a rational animal, an imago Dei, stood at the pinnacle of this creation, guided by a natural telos and a divinely revealed supernatural goal. Nominalism turned this world on its head. For the nominalists, all real being was individual or particular, and universals were thus mere fictions. Words did not point to real universal entities, but merely signs useful for human understanding. Creation was radically particular and thus not teleological. As a result, God could not be understood by human reason, but only by biblical revelation or mystical experience. Human beings thus had no natural or supernatural end or telos. In this way, the nominalist revolution against scholasticism shattered every aspect of the medieval world. It brought to an end the great effort that had begun with the Church Fathers to combine reason and revelation by uniting the natural and ethical teachings of the Greeks with the Christian notion of an omnipotent creator. Just gonna check the notes real quick for anything important. Just at that point, 28, or to put the matter in other terms, the Christian theological enterprise from the 2nd century on was to attempt to unite Athens and Jerusalem. This new combined city was in their view the coming city of God, and was opposed to the city of pagans, whether it was called Rome or Babylon. Until recently, the importance of this debate and the nominalist revolution that it engendered was not recognized. This was certainly due to the decision of the Catholic Church in the late 19th century to unify church doctrine around Thomism, which led to the neglect and the belittlement of the 14th and 15th century critics of Aquinas. This emphasis on Aquinas was motivated by a reasonable desire to clarify Catholic doctrine, but it also rested on the recognition that these nominalist critics had played an important role in laying the intellectual groundwork for the Reformation. A second and perhaps more important reason for the failure to recognize the importance of this epochal revolution is the fact that the God of nominalism was so unsettling. The God that Aquinas and Dante described was infinite, but the glory of his works and the certainty of his goodness were manifest everywhere. The nominalist God, by contrast, was frighteningly omnipotent, utterly beyond human ken, and a continual threat to human well-being. Moreover, this God could never be captured in words, and consequently could be experienced only as a titanic question that evoked awe and dread. It was this question, I want to suggest, that stands at the beginning of modernity. This new vision of God that rose to prominence in the 14th century emphasized divine power and unpredictability rather than divine love and reason. But this new God only made sense because of the tremendous change in the world itself. The Great Schism, the 100 Years' War, the Black Death, the development of gunpowder, the dire economic circumstances brought on throughout Europe by the advent of the Little Ice Age, and the dislocations wrought by urban development, social mobility and the Crusades, were all of crucial importance in the formation of the anxiety and insecurity that made the nominalist vision of the world believable. And that brings us into the next part of this chapter, called The Metaphysical Path to Modernity. So yeah, this book definitely reminds me that the introduction is pretty much covering the whole thing, the whole rest of the work, from a very broad view. I'm going to sit back down and see if my lower back is going to be a little bit kinder now. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, there we go. I'll stretch it there before Helldivers. But yeah, I think we were getting into things a little bit more interesting, and really that section right there at the end, where it described the nominalist and the universalist position, or realist position. It described Thomism and its critics. It described the different form of the gods of God that appears depending on whether you take a nominalist or a realist position, is pretty much, as he puts it, the epochal question that begins modernity. And I think when we get into the book later, you're going to see that it's very well researched and very well done. But for now, I think I'm going to raid into someone who is raiding, or who is streaming right now. Who's doing ASMR, I suppose, because I was doing ASMR. Who was doing? Gino is live, not doing ASMR. Maybe we'll raid into someone new. Hang on, let me... Vika the Blug. The Bug. What's she doing? Oh, okay, that's a bit much. Helldive on stream. I would consider it, but this isn't a thing that I wouldn't. We had discussed. I was asked to play a little while back, and it was not a discussion of a stream together. So just suddenly doing it on stream would be a little bit unfair. But I think if I do enjoy the game, I think I will play. I'll probably play it on stream, and maybe I can play it with a bunch of friends. But okay, is there anyone else that isn't licking everyone's ears? Now, there's always usually one person doing ASMR that I can raid into. Okay, I have found someone. They are currently dressed as Colonel Sanders. Please, not the ear. Don't worry, I'm not gonna do that to you. We're going to raid into Stellar Starberry. So be nice to her. Be nice, okay? Be good to her. And I don't know, just say rule raid or something like that. You love when VTubers are dressed. It's a chibi, and she's dressed as... Oh, that's actually that's kind of a detailed body of Colonel Sanders. Okay, I think it's just the chibi head with glasses, a fake beard, and big bushy eyebrows. But yeah, we're gonna raid into her, and we're just gonna say hello. Oh, she's doing the voice. Okay, I'm gonna send you guys off. Enjoy the Colonel. Greg Neil Mahagut and Slán Gafol. I will talk to you guys later. OG Soup Lover, thank you so much for the follow. You followed just before I was about to raid people. Thank you, and I will see you guys later.